Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's hybrid presentation, Butterflies of the Pajarito Plateau. Before we get started, I wanted to make sure everyone is aware that this presentation is indeed being recorded, and it will be on our YouTube within the next month or 2 months. I am Kristen O'Hara, Director of Programs at Pajarito Environmental Education Center, or PEAC as we lovingly call it, here in Los Alamos, New Mexico. PEAC is a nonprofit that operates the Los Alamos Nature Center. I will be the moderator for today's talk. To learn more about programming that is happening at PEAC, please visit our website, peecnature.org, to learn more and about our programming and to visit our open hours. I'd like to send a shout out to PEAC's wonderful members, donors, and volunteers. Thank you for your generous support. To learn more about becoming a PEAC member, donor, or volunteer, please visit peecnature.org. Or if you're here today in person, because this is a hybrid program, please grab a brochure or programs calendar as you leave today. Just a few logistics for this presentation before we get started. This has a hybrid talk, meaning there are folks in the room with me at the Nature Center and people joining us on Zoom. For those tuning in on Zoom, please note that you will not be able to see our presenter today, just her slides. For questions, our presenter will be taking questions via Zoom chat and from our in-person audience. At the end of the presentation, please hold your questions until the end. To find the chat feature on Zoom, look for the Zoom app menu bar, type in your question to PEAC moderator, that's me, in the chat window, and then we will relay your questions to the presenter at the Q&A at the end. Keeps flashing, it's weird. For those of you also on Zoom, sometimes there will be a delay when we're listening to questions from the live audience. Don't worry, we'll be back in a second and try our very best to remember to repeat the questions for everybody to hear. If for some reason we do not repeat a question, we're only human after all, please gently remind us. After this talk, everyone, in-person and Zoom audience, will receive a short evaluation. Please take a moment to fill that evaluation out. Your input helps us improve future programs. And now, for a bit about our presenter today. Simone Lord, that's who we're being joined by today. Simone is an environmental professional at Los Alamos National Labs. Her passion is wildlife conservation and restoration. Her educational background consists of studying wildlife and pollinator-plant interactions. She loves all pollinators, but especially butterflies. She's originally from Iowa and moved to New Mexico in 2022. She really enjoys the southwestern environment. I'm going to turn it over to Simone now and monitor the chat for questions. Thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy.
Hi everybody. Oh, can everybody hear me okay? Yeah, I was like, whoa, it's loud. Yeah, so I'm Simone. I just moved here a little over a year ago, so I'm still a little bit new to New Mexico, but I'm getting the hang of it. Yeah, so I really like butterflies. In grad school, that's what I studied. So I really like looking at butterflies in the different environments and seeing the differences between the Midwest and the Southwest too. So today we're going to be learning about how to identify them. So you can do it on your own. If you're going on a nature walk or even in your backyard, you can just spot a butterfly and kind of guess to see what it might be. So yeah, a little bit about me. I thought I'd put this slide in. I went to Iowa State. So that's where I was the last couple years. The Midwest. I really like being outdoors, obviously. I have a little dog. His name's George. And I really like prairie dogs right now. It's the first time I saw one last year, 2 years ago. They're so cute. All right, let's get to the butterflies. So a little overview for today, we're going to be talking about the life cycle, anatomy, taxonomy, what kind of equipment you should use for butterfly identification, and how to fast identify some butterflies because they are quick animals. They fly really fast, and it's really hard to kind of catch them and identify each one you see. So, and also we'll be talking about where you can find the butterflies too. That's very important. So, why are butterflies so important? First of all, they're indicator species. So that means they are basically a really good study model for things like climate change and kind of finding out how the habitat around is like healthy or not healthy. So butterflies really indicate if the ecosystem is doing really well or if it's doing not so well. So they're a good model insect to study. They're also pollinators, of course. They pollinate by sitting on the big flowers. The pollen gets all over their legs. They like to drink the nectar, so sometimes it gets on their face, but it's mainly on their legs. And it got cut off a little bit, but people enjoy seeing butterflies, obviously. They're really beautiful. So, starting with the life cycle, some people don't really know this, but some butterflies only live a couple weeks to a couple months. Monarchs live like 2 to 6 weeks. So the first kind of group of monarchs, because they migrate, they live for a couple months, and then the second group only lives a couple weeks. Um, every butterfly is a little bit different. So they have a really short lifespan. They have 4 stages. So the egg stage to caterpillar, chrysalis, and then the adult butterfly stage, of course. Don't confuse a chrysalis with a cocoon, which is for moths. Chrysalis is just for butterflies. And yeah, some more about the anatomy. Um, this is a lot of words, but you just need to know the hind wing, the forewing, underside of the wing, the overside. Those two things will really be identifiers in identifying butterflies because each side looks different, but across the butterfly species, it will be similar. They'll all be the same. So when you talk about butterflies, you have to talk about moths because it's hard to kind of tell the difference sometimes. Um, some moths are really colorful. That's why some people think they're butterflies, but they're moths. A good way to tell the difference is the antennas. Moths have really feather-like antennas. Sometimes it's really small feathers, but it's there. Butterflies have just straight antennas. Um, Moths lay their wings flat. Butterflies will close their wings when they're resting on a plant, a flower, or a surface, or basking in the sun. That's a really good identifier. Moths will also be kind of dull colored most of the time. Some moths are really brightly colored, but all butterflies will mostly be brightly colored. And then the biggest difference is moths are nocturnal, so you'll see them more at night, and butterflies you'll see during the day. Sometimes it overlaps like at dawn or dusk, but that's the main difference. You don't really see moths that much. And if you do, they're usually like on the ground sleeping and you've disturbed them, so they're flying away. So yeah, here's some more brightly colored. Moths are dull colored. Um, yeah, how the wings rest, nocturnal, not nocturnal. So let's get into the taxonomy. So taxonomy is, if you don't know, the scientific classification of organisms. So everything has a taxonomic group. And the scientific classification of butterflies is it goes to get down kind of in order. Each animal or insect has this. So you go to class, which is Insecta, that's all insects. And then the order is called Lepidoptera, and that's moths and butterflies combined. But we're just going to be focusing on butterflies, obviously. And we have the families, there's like superfamilies and subfamilies, not really going to worry about that. And then there's genus and species, and that's the unique name of an organism. So they all have a very unique individual name. So we're going to be looking at some common families. You don't have to worry about the fancy names, but the common names are kind of underneath, and I'll show you some pictures. They all kind of look a little bit similar, so it's a little easier to identify them. We'll have the swallowtails, whites and yellows, blues and coppers, a family called meadowlarks, which is pretty cool, brushfoots, and skippers. So first, we have the swallowtails. You guys have probably seen a lot of these guys around. They're really big. They like to fly high. So that's another indicator is where in the sky these butterflies are flying. Swallowtails love to like catch the wind up at the top because their wings are so big. They're usually yellow, black. They're really beautiful. And we have whites and yellows. They're smaller, low flying. You've probably seen some of these, like a clouded sulfur or something. They're usually yellow or white. Whites and yellows makes sense. And they sometimes have the black around their tips. But if you notice, each butterfly is a little bit different. So it's kind of hard to see if you just have first glance. They all kind of look the same, but they all have unique patterns on each wing. Then we have blues and coppers. So these guys are really, really, really tiny. You'll probably, if you've seen them, they're just like a speck of blue and then they fly away on the ground. They really like to be in like low spots, grassy areas. They're blue, obviously, or copper, and they all have what's called an eye spot on the underside of their wings. So the gray hair streak has a really good example of that. It's an orange and black kind of spot, and it's an eye spot, which eye spots, some animals have eye spots to kind of deter predators and make it look like the predator, they're looking at the predator. I'm not sure how well that works on butterflies, but here's some more blues and coppers. The Melissa blue is pretty common. Those are what the coppers look like. And then we have the metal marks. They have a metallic highlight on the wings, which catches in the sun, which is really cool. They're also pretty small and low flying, and they have unique patterns too. Then we have the brushfoots. So these are like small to medium sized butterflies. They're typically orangish. There's the black and white one at the top right, the admiral. They like to fly like mid-level, not as high as the swallowtails. Swallowtails are huge, but the monarch is in this family. And this family also has a lot of lookalikes, so I put them all next to each other. So there's a monarch, there's something called a queen, and then there's something called a viceroy. They all look the same because they all want to trick out their predators because they don't want to get eaten. Some predators don't like eating, like, for example, queen butterflies, so they taste bad. So monarch wants to look like a queen butterfly. There's also something called a red admiral, which also is orange and black. We have American lady and painted ladies. They look almost identical, but the only difference between them is the American lady has 2 eye spots and the painted lady has 4. So that one you have to look really close if you see one of those 2 in the wild. Those are 2 really common butterflies that fly everywhere. So next we have skippers, and they're small too. They like grassy areas and they kind of skip when they're flying. So they can be identified really quickly as a family because you'll see them be skipping like along the grass, and they're really tiny. So moving on to equipment, when you want to look for butterflies, the most important thing I would recommend is your camera, because like I just said, there's so many unique identifiers. So if you take a picture, if you can catch him like just laying on a flower or resting on a grass, then it's perfect to snap a picture and you can zoom in and look at those different identifiers. If you want to get really fancy, you can get an insect net and try to catch it, or some binoculars. Even though they fly really fast, if you catch them resting, you can see. And here's some things to keep in mind when you're just out there looking at butterflies. So the first one is view. What side of the butterfly are you observing? The underside of the wing, the upper side of the wing, um, the top of the butterfly, underneath the butterfly. How big is the butterfly? Like I said, it really matters. If they're really small, if they're huge, like the swallowtails, the shape of the wings. So they all have unique shapes along with the patterns, the color, which is the pattern or the main color of the wings, the markings. Are there eye spots? Are there dots? Other stripes, patterns? And also the behavior of the butterfly. So is it laying eggs? Is butterfly mating? Are they nectaring, which is just drinking nectar from the flowers? Basking? Are they flying? What are they doing? Okay, the next thing to keep in mind is where to find butterflies, because you don't want to just walk around if you're going butterfly looking, and you probably won't see any if you're walking around the wrong place. So you will find, depending on the type of time of year, you'll find butterflies around their host plant. So if you don't know what a host plant is, butterflies need host plants, and that's a plant that they use to lay their eggs on, and they only use a specific plant to lay their eggs because the caterpillars will eat the leaves from that plant and they'll only eat those leaves. So another fact people might not know is some butterflies don't even have mouths. So they get all their nutrients in the caterpillar stage. So it's really important for them to have host plants for them to feed on and get all their nutrients as caterpillars so they can survive as adults. And butterflies are also generalists. So that means they could nectar from almost any flower. So they really enjoy large flowers because they are large insects. They like flowers that have like a really big landing pad that's easy for them to land on and kind of get their nectar from, something pretty easy. And then lastly, you'll find butterflies on warm summer days between around 11 and 5. So they like to sleep in, they like to go to bed early. They just like to be warm. So if it's chilly, if there's a breeze, probably won't find any butterflies, maybe one. But yeah, they like that hottest part of the day, which is kind of bad for us because we'll be sweating outside, but they really enjoy it. So this is a host plant example. As you guys know, monarchs, everybody loves monarchs. They need milkweed, and those are some monarch caterpillars in the picture feeding on milkweed leaves. So monarchs only lay their eggs on milkweed. That's why it's really essential for us to kind of protect milkweed for the monarchs in protection of the monarchs because there's no milkweed, they have nowhere to lay their eggs, and then that's to the detriment of the species. Okay, final thoughts. So, more ID options. If you guys are here, you probably know what iNaturalist is, but it's a phone app, it's free, and you can download it and upload some pictures of anything living, and people in your community can help you identify it. It's really useful, and I know a lot of people are on iNaturalist. If you want to get really fancy, some field guides and books have dichotomous keys, which is a random example I found from the internet. That is the picture there. I don't even know what really, oh, it is an insect dichotomous key, but it's kind of like a pick your adventure of identifying an living organism. Um, I kind of view it as a game. It's kind of fun sometimes. You just answer, you look at each prompt and answer a question based on what your observations are of the insect or animal or any living organism you're trying to identify. And a dichotomous key will help you find close enough to the species or the family that you're looking for. So they're really useful. They could get really complicated though. So today, I thought we could practice some identification based on this presentation in the garden right outside of Peak. We could use our phones, like I said, take some pictures, zoom in, and use iNaturalist if you want. I also brought a couple of books too if we want to use them. But just walk around, try to find some butterflies and identify them. I think it's really fun, especially when you see something and you don't know what it is and you're like, oh, I found it. I found what it is. So hopefully it'll be really fun for everybody else too. And I'll come around and help everyone, of course. Any questions or anything? Yeah. Online, yeah. Mm-hmm. So should I repeat the question or the comment? The comment was that Peak actually has a online kind of database of butterflies to help with identification, which is really cool. Yeah, possibly. So, yeah, so the question was that she has a moon garden, which is really cool and good for nocturnal pollinators. And there's milkweed there. And last year there were a bunch of painted ladies on the milkweed, but this year there aren't. Um, I don't know why that's happening. It could be, I mean, climate change is kind of to the detriment of insects in general. And butterflies, especially, like I said, they're good indicator species, so that might be an indication. But that definitely could be, that probably is what's happening because a lot of animals and insects are moving, what is it, closer to cooler climates, how they used to be, which is more north as it gets warmer. So that might be happening slowly right now. Hmm. 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 Yeah, so the question is, what do butterflies do during rain events? Yeah, so they will probably just hide under leaves, under trees, in forests, under grasses, or just low areas. Yeah. Mhm. So the question was, are there certain families that are impacted by climate change, butterfly families? And I'm not too sure, but I don't think so. I think they're all impacted the same. Yeah. Mhm. Mhm. So the question was, are there the migration patterns for butterflies differing? Like, are there different butterflies in New Mexico that used to be in Mexico? Um, so I haven't been here that long to observe that, but I don't think so. Because I don't know, I guess I have to be here longer to observe some more butterflies where I'm like, oh, I haven't seen this like Mexican butterfly before. But there are butterflies that from Mexico that will come up here, and I don't know if that's normal or not.
How many generations of monarchs go from the farthest north
Mhm.
there twice in that?
So the question was, how many generations of monarchs migrate to Mexico? And I think it's just two. So the first two. So the first generation starts up north, and then we get the second generation. Yeah. Is that everything? Should we go outside? Oh yeah, online too. Mm-hmm. No, so the question was, do butterflies feed on specific butter or specific flowers? So no, they don't. So butterflies are generalists. They feed on anything that is there while they're alive, pretty much. They do favor larger flowers and brightly colored flowers because they are just attracted to bright things. And yeah, their legs are long, so they like a really good landing pad. That's something that's easy for them to feed on. Yeah, nice.
That was loud. All right, so we're gonna say goodbye to our Zoom audience at this point, and our in-person audience, you're welcome to join us out. And we're not going far. We're just going into our garden area to search for butterflies to, get a hands-on identification moment. So goodbye, Zoom audience. Thank you for joining us. Please look for that evaluation, and we hope you join us on future programs.